Welcome to my presentation, Jenny's Journey Through Ties. It's good to be here in front of a giant audience. Alright, I'm just kidding. We all know that with social distancing, we cannot gather in big groups. So let's get real and come with me to my social distance presentation. Welcome to our socially distanced and quaint presentation. All right, hi. This is kind of a monumental moment for me in my life and my journey, because everything, literally everything from the creation of the universe, the expansion of the universe, the creation of planet Earth, and everything that has conspired has happened since then, has led us to be here right now in this moment. And I feel like for the first time I'm aware of that idea, that I actually am here and present and have a purpose. And that's a huge leap. It's very emotional for me. So I guess where we begin is with my story, because my story is what led me to this journey. This is going to be harder than I thought.
We're all here for you.
Alright. So, what brought me to TIES, my master's program through Endicott, is questions. Who am I? What am I supposed to be doing? Why am I here? Why do I feel uncomfortable with everyday decisions? Why don't I feel good, like, with how I parent or how I'm interacting with other humans, right? So looking for those answers about what is it that I'm passionate about? What is it that I care about? And that has brought me to a deeper kind of understanding of where I am and why I'm here. And so the points that I'm going to hit that we've kind of gone through with TIES is we have a little bubble map. So in my integrative community, my little learning community, we've kind of hit a bunch of different areas that are all kind of integrated. We have our cosmological worldview, understanding how to shift our perspective. We've talked about communication and values and certain human assumptions that we make, the importance of story and the role that story takes. We talk about process and actions, and about the idea of autopoiesis and self-creating, and what that means on a cosmic level, a global level, and a personal, like human level, and how and feedback loops, and then how that is kind of intertwined with our world, Gaia. So, and planet Earth and what role that has. So where to begin, because everything is intertwined, is always like a challenge for me to figure out. So the first thing that really, really struck me, like throughout this entire course, is the idea of assumptions and how, like, where those come from, and the idea of our where does our consciousness come from, and what assumptions do we have because of those, and what experiences we like share, and that pool of knowledge that we have. Is that pool, are we all in the same pool? And what does that look like? So just for purposes of like opening this up, what are some values that you think that we all share? Like, do you guys have any contributions of values that you think that we might have in common?
By we all, do you mean the people in this room, or do you mean the world?
Humanity.
Great question. Yeah. Up to your discretion. Like, between us and between the world and between, I feel like the broader we get, the more we open it up. So
I think we value comfort universally.
universally, comfort.
I'm not saying it's something to be proud of.
Yeah. I guess
Human.
under human.
Yeah. I think the people in this room value the limited resources that we have, so the planet,
Limited resources.
that we acknowledge that resources are not
Yeah.
infinite, that they are finite, and that we need to be cognizant of future generations.
I think art is a good one.
Yeah.
I think sleep and hydration.
Yes. Basic needs.
I strongly value those.
I think those can be found under comfort.
Hydration.
No, they don't have their survival. So can you just say we value anything that keeps us alive?
We've got, yeah.
Is there a better word for that?
Like sleep and hydration.
Food.
Yeah.
Value our relationships, our family relationships.
Our relationships.
I think pretty much most people value LeBron James.
LeBron James. Athletes, artists, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Also like a sense of community.
That's good.
That's why we value LeBron James.
Community is good.
And something that ties has actually, like, we've explored is making these like mind maps. And so a lot of what I was used to was this linear thinking, and a shift that I've kind of made is using that mind map and exploring how this would look if we just simply like viewed it differently or drew it differently. So like even, making our circles, and going, okay, is comfort part of, you can actually expand each one of these out, right? And how are they connected? So finding those creating common meaning and finding those what our values are, and then understanding that possibly I could be assuming that might be someone else's value when they might have a completely different set of values, and how that plays into how I might communicate with them has been a big, like, It's taken up a lot of my thought space. The other, really, it seems simple, but it's just something that's really been amazing to kind of actualize, like to see and to understand, is the fact that paradoxes exist everywhere and in everything. And it's just so, it's been very, like, almost relieving. I don't know how else to say it. But understanding that things can be both something. They can be both. Do you guys have an example of a paradox that you might think is relevant? Like that you think that can both be real, both be...
Yeah, I mean, you want to protect your children, but you also want them to explore and to discover. And you can't sometimes do both at the same time.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Just when I think about the issue of immigration itself is a paradox, because you want to, when you look at what the actual argument is, people have a right to live where they want and be where they want and make a life for themselves wherever they can. And people have a right to protect what they've built and protect what they've grown and protect, so that sometimes causes
Yeah.
that kind of...
Women, you can't live with them, you can't live without them.
That's awesome. And we could do this, the same thing.
Technology.
We could break it down again from like human. So we have paradoxes that exist in everywhere. I didn't do that. That's okay. Like contrary values, like values that someone else might have that
And I agree.
that you don't or I don't,
I
That was
think,
the other thing I was gonna do.
I think recognizing those paradoxes is liberating.
It's liberating. That's the word I'm looking for. Yeah, there's something.
It's okay.
Yeah.
I agree with you. Like there was, that's not the word in literature we use, but it's that same concept.
Yeah. So on a human level, paradox exists in social, like where you see a lot of political issues will have or paradox because both things.
Almost all major
Security
issues
versus
are
growth.
Security versus growth.
religious. Religion.
Like things you want versus things you need.
Religion.
I would say freedom versus security.
Yeah,
Mm.
that's a really, what are we, when you think about what happens at airports, civil liberties versus security. Just even,
Yeah. I love the parenting one that you were saying too. There's so much of parenting.
Yeah, that was a good one that I said.
you already wrote that, it's both.
Oh, did I?
Security
No.
versus growth, yeah.
On a guy. Oh, I didn't do the colors. On planet Earth,
Mm-hmm.
like in the systems that exist on Earth. Can we think of any paradoxes that exist?
I mean, yeah, just even,
Predators versus prey.
Yeah.
They say the existence of humanity versus the existence of the planet.
Yeah, right.
No, the planet will be here. We're just a threat to
We are.
biological diversity.
And, yeah, well,
Humanity.
yeah, but we value biological diversity and yet we destroy it.
Right.
So that's a paradox.
Right, humanity valuing, there you go, valuing, I don't know how to spell things. Valuing biodiversity, right?
Mm-hmm.
or valuing water and resources and clean air,
Yeah,
clean
diversity.
water, but then at the same moment,
our
we're
ecosystem.
destroying it.
Yeah.
And isn't this kind of like a, we just made this a human. So this actually kind of ties into, because this is how we're interacting with the planet, right? Not like an already existent, like or global, or a system that exists on the planet.
I mean,
Like a river running down the side of the mountain, like the chaos that ensues, and
The erosion, and pretty soon it's not gonna have a lot to run down.
right, but it's not really a paradox.
No.
Trying to think of a
About
Yeah.
volcanoes,
volcano.
because they cause untold destruction, they also create all of the land.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Friggin' perfect, yeah.
yeah, fires even
Right, forest fires.
create, or
Yeah.
create rebirth.
Right, they're both
Destructive and
destructive
renewing.
and
And force
creative,
for
yeah.
renewal, yeah.
forest fires, volcanoes. Yeah, that's,
There's
And
something
then-
paradoxical about like, you know, certain kind of vermin and insects that eat their own young.
yeah. That's a good one too.
Or like when a bunch of praying mantis are all born, they just like, race to see if they eat each other.
Yeah.
You know, that's paradoxical.
How do you spell
Survival of
praying?
the fittest.
Praying, just like
PM, praying mantis.
Cannibalism,
yeah.
paradoxical.
Killing for survival.
Mm-hmm.
Cannibalism. And then on a cosmic level,
Black holes.
black holes.
How is that paradox?
Wow.
Well, it's
both-
eating the universe.
And then doing
Well-
what?
Well, it's, good point. Well,
Well, I mean, the
existing.
idea of something
How about-
becoming,
how about-
being
seems like
so
it's-
dense that it's actually,
the what
it's
do you
just
call the
super
star?
dense.
The nebular star? Supernova? Supernova star. Thank you. Supernovas. It explodes to create. Like it does the same thing as we're talking about with forest fires. So that's a good one.
I mean, also, yeah, the idea of a supernova is actually becoming so, there's something about the dense, something that gets so dense, so big that it can only be small. That's what a black hole is, you know, it's something so big that it's small, that it's infinitesimally small. It's like infinitely small. That's paradoxical, so I'm just trying to find a
Thank you.
path underneath there.
Yeah, still working on the black
Thank you.
hole. Trying to make
Thank
you
you
feel
for
better.
answering the question, and then what?
And so we're talking about with these we brought up like these examples because we were interested in finding the paradox, right, that exists, like acknowledging the paradox, right? And then also what we see through every system in our universe, world, and our systems, like even our human systems, is the idea of autopoiesis. Okay.
OIESIS.
Is this idea of autopoiesis, which is this self-generating, this idea that each system or that a thing, okay, great, that's where I'm at, is self-creating, is that So if we'll just go to on a cosmic scale. So on a cosmic scale, like we look at all like different systems that function on the cosmic level, and we can say, how they started and how they generated, and that they are working towards self-creation. Like that there's a driving force within that thing that will self-create, that will find a way to self-create. So even the supernova star, if we're going to use that as our example, that supernova star, like how does it become? And how does it continue? And then how does it create? Like it's governing itself, has its own systems that work and function and circle, right?
Maybe.
And so, yeah, I mean, I don't know how to describe it. Do you have another?
I don't know anything about supernovas, how they work.
Or like systems in the universe, like even the expansion of the universe, right? The expansion of the universe had to happen at such a speed that it didn't collapse and it didn't explode. It expanded. And if it didn't expand at that very specific rate, then nothing that we know would exist.
Right, but but your ultimate point is, to me, the one I question is whether or not that's self-governing
So
or self-creating.
right, like each system that is created out of that system is a part of that whole. But
And we don't know what the universe is a part of.
Right, yeah,
That's what I'm saying.
yeah. That's awesome. Yeah. And so and then on a planetary level, like the systems within that planetary level, forests. So,
Yep.
yeah,
Everything is creative on Earth.
everything. Literally everything that's created on Earth. We were talking about like even just the trees and the forests in general, and how each individual tree and plant and organism is in itself its own organism, but then and it branches out and then becomes a community and interdependent at the same time, which brings us.
It's isn't it like that everything wants to acquire nutrients and procreate, and everything else is in service of that. So if building a community together is better in service of that, it's all created from just that desire.
Yeah, and then if it doesn't better itself, so if there's like an organism that doesn't need a community, even on a cellular level, that cell is going to exist and be and develop how it needs to develop, right? Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yeah, it's hard to explain. Doing a terrible job. Oh God. I mean, it's the first time I've tried to articulate these things out loud, It's really weird. So then autopoiesis on a human level actually really ties us into Montessori. Because Montessori uses, kind of observed that process, the fact that we are self-creating. She observed it by watching children in her life work, and realized that human beings will seek out from their environment what they need to develop, and that they will self-create. A child will find what they need and they'll self-develop. They will. Yeah. So, that kind of ties us into Montessori, but she uses a different phrase, not autopoiesis, the absorbent mind. You hear that phrase, like, so then looking at our human list, these systems, like our political system, so not only is it like on a cellular level and a creature level, but it's also on a systematic level. We can see how these systems kind of unfold. and give feedback loops. So you'll see systems create themselves like through different kinds of, like our political systems. We had, I mean, there's so much history behind that, and that is kind of referred to through the program as like feedback loops, and whether it be positive, negative, doesn't matter, but they just kind of generates these whole systems that we have, whether it be security, our religion, different religions, parenting. And then, which brings me to kind of the next, I don't know how this ties in, because I'm, is this idea in our culture and in our communities, I don't know, is the idea that was really also kind of profound to me, was this idea that we live in a society that often clings to dualities. Which kind of limits our limits, just kind of, I'll just leave it there. It limits. Dualities that limit.
Forces us into a black and white narrative.
Yes, yeah. And the fact that those exist everywhere is just like mind-blowing to me. Like,
Well, it ties back to your idea of paradox and the existence.
yeah, how does it do that?
Well, that dualities exist and make it black and white, whereas paradox say it's okay for those that it's, whereas duality says it's not okay, that you're either wrong or right, or it's black or white, and then paradox exists to say it's okay to be both black and white. It's okay to be both right and at
Yeah.
the same moment.
I just think that it has to do with just our in our DNA. I mean, I think that our DNA is prepared for the world to be complicated and hard to survive in. And so for us to categorize things as either good or bad is our first and most primal instincts. Because this is either bad, it makes my survival harder, or it's good, it makes my survival easier. Or my ability to gain nutrients and procreate.
Yeah.
And so I think it's just us getting over that primal reptile brain, and that's just hard to do. People say, that there's no such thing as a logical decision, that everything is made in your reptile brain, and logic only comes in afterwards to justify it.
Yeah, the systems, that's like one of the systems that developed over time. We needed it.
Of course.
We needed that to simplify the world,
Yeah.
and now we've created this entire system.
I mean, the minute it got complicated
Of
is when
dualities.
we domesticated wolves, Then it got real complicated. But not all wolves are bad wolves.
Should I write that on the board?
No.
So I love looking at and finding dualities like that exist in our culture, and where did they come from, like, and why do they exist? And I find them everywhere in stories, and in the stories that we tell our children, and how we're kind of reinforcing this thing that limits us, that we don't need anymore necessarily, but that it's so built into our stories. And how do we know who we are is through stories. So so I feel like we're perpetuating, and it really made me take a look at the media, all the shows that any show that I let the kids watch, or any book, the books and stories that I'm reading. Oh, look, there's a good guy and a bad guy. Is that guy bad? Does bad exist? What is bad? What is that, So like, instead of limiting them to like this bad guy narrative, I've tried to like expand that, but the stories that I have don't offer that narrative. They don't offer it. So I feel like that's something like else I want to delve deeper into and see about kind of how can I assist in not eliminating dualities, but in expanding.
On your subject about about the bad guy
Yeah,
in narrative fiction or whatever,
yeah.
you should read Chuck Klosterman's The Man in the Black Hat.
The Man in the Black Hat.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
And it's just about the history of the cultural history of villains and throughout different cultures.
Oh, interesting. That sounds awesome.
It talks a lot about what you were just talking about.
Yeah. And then I
I guess it's
noticed
pronounced close to me.
this just came up in my head, but we went into what role perception plays in that as well. And one of the books, gosh, I don't know if I remember the title right now. It's like I See the Cat, and it's a children's book that shows the cat from a bunch of different perspectives. So it says that the child sees the cat, and it shows a picture of like the child and how the child might view that cat, and then it shows the dog views the cat, and it shows the cat looking much differently. The mouse views the cat, as you can imagine. So the cat looks so different throughout the entire story. And that idea, like,
Reality is based on the perceiver.
yes, I love that, thank you. The reality is based on the receiver, which also, so that perception brings us to like another big topic that we had, that we kind of delved into, which was observation. So in Montessori, one of the main roles of the guide that is working with with children is to observe children and then prepare the environment accordingly based on their observations. So understanding that my perception, how to create an unbiased perception of that child, because I might view that child differently on my experience and based on my biases. So really taking a step back and understanding that has been challenging, because it's hard for me to see my own biases and see what is my perception and how does that manipulate my observation of this child. So, which leads me back to my story. How does my story impact those observations? So it's such a circle that it's hard to know where to start. That's what I mean. I'm like, where do I start? I don't know. Maybe next time I give this presentation, it'll be a little bit more coherent,
Maybe it
What's that?
helps.
I know, right? Honestly.
It's been a good journey in critical thinking.
Yeah, I love it, honestly. Where are we at? Let's see.
Your story.
I know, but do I actually have to tell my story? You
Oh,
know?
I
I know.
Yeah.
I was avoiding it, yeah.
Keep teasing
How
it.
does your story influence your observations?
So how does my story influence my
Check out
observation?
story here.
Is a great question. I mean,
I agree.
Is that something I go into? That I should go into?
I don't know.
Well, if you don't, you should stop talking about your story.
Right. I mean, I kind of started with my story, so.
You should just at least say why your story has impacted your methodologies or
Okay.
If you keep talking
what
about
did
your
you
story,
learn?
Or what did you learn about
it
your
feels like all of
about
this
your
is a preamble to a
bias?
story that's never coming.
Chuck.
So, I know, I mean, that's just what I'm still evaluating. That's the problem. Is that I don't have
That's the part of your presentation.
Yeah, you acknowledge
That's
that
who
you
you are.
recognize that, but you just,
right, but I just, I just don't know how that impacts my observations.
Well,
Like,
I think that also connects really to the timeliness of all of this stuff going on with the bias we're looking at with, social justice right now.
yeah,
It's, that we're evaluating, wait a minute,
Yeah.
maybe, this white privilege thing isn't made up. Maybe everything that I do is, everything that every
Perceived.
way that I react is
Yeah.
actually because of that white privilege.
right,
And how do I get beyond that?
right.
Those are hard things to know.
Yeah.
You think you have it, but you can't. You can't possibly, because that's what you lived.
Right.
I was thinking about two of the subjects that you brought up, about dualities and about that book where everybody sees the cat differently.
Yeah.
I think that's why dualities exist, because everybody's perception is different. If you generalize enough, you can get someone to agree with you.
Right. So which brings us
So
to
it's like, if you want people to mobilize in a direction, you have to be vague enough that half of them are willing to agree with it.
right. Yeah, and that a big part
The
of
camera is just facing that board, and that's
Oh,
it.
boy.
Okay, so.
It has Adam's leg and that board.
Will you
Okay,
tilt
so
it?
move it back over.
Okay.
Did you see that?
There.
But you can't see any of the audience. Is
Zoom
that
it out.
okay?
Yeah.
You just move over.
Yeah, it's gone. It's gone, right,
Yeah, you
Shirley?
want to back it up a little or whatever.
It just got like zoomed in.
Yeah, on,
It's weird.
what did you just say? Because you were just saying, oh,
That,
That-
since everybody's perception is their own,
Yeah.
dualities make it easier for people to agree with each other since nobody can see things the same way.
right, and then, which brings us to like our,
Oh, yeah.
those assumptions, like,
Another very good reason.
to like have a duality. or
Evolutionary
have-
reason.
Yeah, and that, and part of,
Man's been grappling with that for
there it
a
is.
long time. Think of that ancient Indian folk tale about the elephant and all the men standing around the elephant and describing what an elephant was.
I got a rope, I got a tree trunk.
Right,
And what is it? What's the,
It's just an elephant, but they're all on different sides.
but they're all on different sides of it.
Yeah.
And so when they go there, they go to describe, they're all blind, and then they go to describe it.
I've always been on the rope side, I'm
Yeah.
a rope guy. I think elephants are rope.
They describe it in different ways, so it's not, so men grapple with that idea that perception gets in the way of how you interact with others in the world.
how do you accomplish anything as a, like the human, how does the human race
And I
tackle
think
those
that's
same problems?
working together. So if you put all of their perceptions together, they come up with
You need a
the
message
truth that is
more
an
compelling
elephant.
than the duality.
So an elephant isn't just that, the trunk, and it isn't just the rope, it's all of it.
Mm,
And the child isn't just what you see, it's you listening to your parents, and what they see, and what they
But
get.
you're never gonna get
And
there
you
if the rope
listening
guy
to
doesn't
what
talk
other
to the
children
foot guy.
say, and what they say,
Right,
and listening to what the age says and what she sees.
Right.
So it's putting all of that together.
to
That's
form,
what makes a clear vision, but it still won't be the whole vision,
right.
but it'll be a better vision.
And then understanding too that our observations are going to manipulate the observed was a big part of what we've kind of looked at. We're like, how does your
No way around
presence impact, right? There's no way around it. Yeah. I mean, with technology, I feel like, I always think about this, like, so those hidden cameras are kind of cool because you can get like an unbiased view of like what the child would be like if you were not sitting right there. So I feel like technology has afforded us so much.
But even that's still through a filter.
Yeah, what do you mean expand?
Because it's just a two-dimensional piece of what's going on.
Right.
You can't actually get the full presence of what a person's doing.
Yeah,
You can just get very surface.
So acknowledging that it has its limitations.
That emotional or dynamic that's occurring during that
Right.
activity, that's interesting.
Yeah. No, there's like that.
Feel something
Right.
with someone, yeah.
Yeah.
And there's literally a
It's much
binary
more
filter
dynamic.
and a glass filter in between them.
Right. And that was another whole topic is technology. Like, and that's one of those paradoxes. Like it is technology that is both helping us be destructive, but it's also affording us
Get us out of it.
these incredible opportunities, right? Yeah. And it also can connect us to create that full image, but it also can limit our perception. So to just, I don't know, just that awareness of, it's just brought me that awareness. It has been really, that right there is awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, Charlie.
What else have you done to? You've been doing this for an hour.
Have I been going for an hour? Nice. Okay, so let's see. I was gonna,
Something to do with Play-Doh?
I didn't even do the
41 minutes.
Huh?
41 minutes.
41 minutes?
Oh, really?
Okay, yeah.
50.
So, we talked.
Pretty good track, right?
We talked about another really part of like understanding like part of the story and like even that ties into like that idea of self-organization is this this bifurcation moment, like this aha moment that happens in our lives that causes us to shift, to like make a shift or like make a change. So we can break this down like these bifurcation moments are like breaks in the cycles. So you have like these moments of, or you know, what seemingly looks like a pattern, and then you have a break which leads you to kind of go off into like a different direction. And so we evaluated like what are those moments in our lives and in our stories. One for me was, you know, when I went to rehab. That was a big moment, an aha moment for me, which made like the whole cycle shift and made me spiral in like a different direction. And then another one was leaving Rigatoni's. And that was just one of those moments that was like, I could be doing something else. I could. Do you guys have any moments like that in your lives that were?
I'm in the middle of one.
Yeah, retiring.
Retiring from a
Yeah.
career career.
I keep doing the wrong colors. Not that it matters, but
Becoming a parent.
Yeah.
Yes.
When my wife broke her leg, I got a lot better at housework.
break up. Yeah.
I count that.
Oh, a lot better than I was.
Yeah. I'd say meeting Adam Reedy was an aha moment for me.
For most.
Meeting certain people in your life, I guess, can offer.
I've had a couple bifurcation moments on the toilet.
It does kind of sound
I was,
like digestive. You know?
that's gross. Let's take it one step too far.
I think becoming a parent is actually one of the biggest, life-changing. It's like, oh, now I know why I exist on the planet.
Yeah.
I really undervalued sleep and hydration.
So those moments, identifying those moments in your story, identifying, that was, I think, just to kind of like wrap it up for now.
Is my story my life? Is
Yeah.
that what that means?
Yeah. Like your life journey. Yeah.
I really thought we were gonna hear a story.
I know, maybe I should add that in, you know? Like tie it in somehow, like literally my story, I don't know. And then also the butterfly effect and how those two things kind of, they're separate, but they're both, like they're two separate concepts, right? Like there's a bifurcation, but then at the same time, the butterfly effect, that little moment, like a little tiny action that has a chain reaction, like throwing the ripple, you know, throwing a rock in the river and watching the ripples come out, you know, or so I feel like there's a similarity in nature. Does that make sense? Like,
Yeah, and you can see it in the growth of a child. You know, you can see that one.
The growth of a forest fire.
yeah, like that one little spark.
Well, yeah, sure. Yeah,
That one little spark lights
same,
up,
Same concept.
and then all of a sudden that forest that was functioning this way is now being taken over by like a fire.
Yeah, but I mean, with the kid though, you expose them to something. You expose them to, but that triggers them in some certain way, and you see them, and then their interests
Yeah,
develop in that way, and they become a wildly different person because of that.
because of that, yeah, that exposure, that momentary experience or exposure. And then also, I love this quote. This was really like on that note. The artistic creativity is a universal human attribute that gets extinguished in most of us because we are unable to meet external criteria discrepant with our level of development.
Yeah.
Like there's that.
Yep. Well, that I used to make this quote all the time from Ira Glass in my classes. He says that for every person to get to where you are, to where you want, to where you start with your taste in the arts or whatever,
Right.
and then you commit an act of creation, and you can see the difference between your taste and your creation, and that's what stifles the creative process. Is that noticing that
interesting.
difference. And so
Yeah.
the trick of becoming a fully actualized creative person is bridging a gap in one way or in some way.
In some way.
Either
Yeah.
in your mind, somehow there's a gap between what you're
Giving.
That's exactly what happened to me when I started taking my glass art classes. My taste and my ability, like, it's like they were so far apart
Yeah.
that,
You just want to stop.
and it's hard to keep going when you know I will never be able to create the thing that I have in my
Right.
mind as good taste. Like, no matter how many summers I take this class, the best I'm gonna do is a round blob of glass
Right.
with some colors in it. That's as good as I'm gonna get. Now, why do I wanna keep, is it because I'm ever gonna actualize into
Right.
that artist? No. So then, it's for the joy of the process. At some point, is the joy of the process worth it to you?
Right.
You know, just going through that and attempting and playing with it and trying again and again. You know, I know that I'm never gonna be a glass artist, but I love glass art, and I wish I could, but I just
Yeah.
love doing it.
Yeah.
And you start to see the beauty in what you have created. Like, oh, actually,
And you
That's
start-
good. That's a really good point, Jessica.
And you
Yeah, finding
appreciate
the beauty
things
in what
like
you
all the
have
more
created.
now that you know
Huh?
how difficult it is. You appreciate the things you like even
Oh,
more.
so that's so true.
Yeah.
You do. You just appreciate that. What went into,
Yeah.
like, even people's good glass balls. Wow. Something as simple as that. But I think that what Jessica just said makes a lot of sense. Like, you,
bridge the gap, as he was saying.
gonna make sure I hit all my points. So we talked about dualities, paradox, places. We talked about media and technology, the development of the universe, the development of our planet, the systems within, like systems learning, systems within our planet, within ourselves, within our communities, and then that butterfly effect, right? How those little motions can set
New system.
different trajectories, yeah. Montessori, trajectory,
Projected trajectory.
trajectory. Montessori, the Montessori Junior, her son Mario, we read, he wrote like Human Tendencies, and it's remarkable because it really does like break down like the human tendencies, which I don't know why I just brought that up because I know I'm not going to be able to recite them, off the top of my head. But how we have certain tendencies, and then when you look at, like, are those tendencies available to be met? Like, do you have, like, looking at the child, so not only like observe, like it helps with observations when you're trying to prepare an environment, you go, well, we need to be in an environment, that is suitable for growth and development. Well, what do we need? What do human beings need? So understanding we have these tendencies, we have these needs, it helps us to create that environment for the children, right? Our story, like talking about the importance of story and story in general, and what that, like how we understand our universe and understand ourselves in terms of a story, like it's really interesting. I love that there's a quote that like really stuck with me too, with like, we are the universe looking at itself. That was really cool. That was awesome. I was like, it just talks about consciousness. Yeah, I think those were like a lot of the big ones for me throughout this whole process, and it's been super. I feel more aware, more grounded, more capable, and even like more important. Like I feel like it's okay to feel important, like and capable, and it's been awesome. Questions?
What was the Play-Doh for?
So at
It's
one
good
point,
manipulative while we're sitting and listening.
yeah,
I didn't give you Play-Doh.
you have Play-Doh
Your
on your
son
little
took
stand.
yours. Oh, no, he took hers.
So at one point during, we understand, like we went into the processes of like cognition in the brain and thought and meditation and time and space. And at one point during this semester, we had a creative session where we just sat and manipulated and like we're conscious of our thoughts. And I sat outside under the tree and just like manipulated this object of clay without like looking at it, with no intentions, with no direction other than to like be. And it was super rewarding. It was
sounding more and more like my MFA.
What is that? What's the?
Said it's sounding more and more like my MFA. It is her MFA.
You sound like fine arts.
No, but I mean, it's her,
Jerk.
Yeah.
Fine arts.
it's her version.
So yeah, so I got you guys a
NFL
little
NHL.
piece of
Manipulative.
play,
That's our takeaway.
something to like, yeah, something to take and manipulate and just be.
I made brain.
And that's the other thing with Montessori, like to work with your hands and the connection, like that mind and hand connection.
Kinesthetic.
Yeah, yeah. And then also which brings us to like another whole idea of, nice, which brings us to another whole idea of our conscious thoughts. What are our conscious thoughts? Like, are the thoughts that are in the forefront of our brain, are they our thoughts? Or is that the collective thought that has been like given to us? And there was this incredible movie that we watched, What is Life? That they talked about this idea of like this like conscious pool that we do share. And it was really quite an amazing concept.
Archetype. So she's starting an archetype and stuff.
Is that what that is? What's it called?
You like Jungian, the collective unconscious?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Archetypes
such a beautiful idea. And I don't know, I feel like
Memetics.
sometimes when you don't think in
Programs our brains naturally run.
Exactly.
yeah, so cool. That's so cool. What other questions? Did I hit, you know? This is the program, like, the things that I kind of mentioned, this is kind of how it related. This is how I laid it out. We did mind mapping, which I've now used mind mapping like this instead of the linear list. I've started to use the mind mapping and like to get like to just like be productive in life.
So
Get blood flow,
I
yeah.
guess my next question is, how is this going to help me acquire nutrients and reproduce?
It'll literally just
You actually don't have any need of that.
yeah.
You're done with both.
It'll just make you ask more questions and
What do I do after
Really?
I
You're going to
gain
okay.
nutrients and reproduce?
exactly.
Is what this is about.
Yes. Yeah.
Did you want to show us any of those books or anything?
Yeah.
Is that
So
what you're supposed to do?
I just brought my my binders to like show the work that I've done, to show that like the journey. This is all part of the journey, like exploring the infant program, exploring the toddler program, exploring the you know what observation is. We have an entire observation album. My child development. So on a biological, social emotional, developmental, child development, and I'm missing one. Oh, and then our child, family, and community. And then, of course, the philosophy, like Montessori philosophy. So that just is
Just the physical.
all the, yeah, just more, just a lot of information. that
You
I
did a
wanted to
nice
share.
job putting all those together, honey. They look great.
And this is a fraction of the books that I've read for this program.
Wow.
Just a fraction. It's crazy. It's amazing. But it's been really enlightening and amazing. So thank you for letting me share my experience with you. I appreciate
Maybe
it.
someday you'll share your story.
Oh my god. And that's it.
Yay!